So, well, we have just finished going over a little bit on what happens after exonerees are released, the hardships in prison, and then the hardships outside of prison. Adjustment to life. We went over Obie's law, and compensation and housing, employment. But we'd love to hear your take on all of those things and all of the work that you're, what are you working on right now with Exonerated Nation, those kinds of things.
Nice. So I guess as I, thinking about today's class and thinking about, having an opportunity to talk about the front end, which is the cause of wrongful conviction, but then also talking about what happens after exoneration once, when those things happen. And so, the work that I do is really about healing the debilitating effects of being framed and put in prison for a crime you didn't commit. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, in every which way. Because prison is a sort of a demoralizing place. They seek out to really beat back the mind by, ways of different tactics of humiliations and taking you through different sort of what I used to call mental gymnastics, right? One time is one way, next time it's another way. They want you to be back and forth. And so for us at Exonerated Nation is really about dealing with the effect of that, specifically and particularly coming back into society after X amount of years of that sort of kind of, behavior, of that sort of kind of treatment. It has an effect on a person in the way that they receive people, in the way that they receive themselves, in the way that they go about their normal lives and things like that, or what is presumed to be normal. Because after all exonerations, there's always a continual fight for freedom. As I always say, freedom isn't free. And so what happens is that, even though a person, sometimes they get exonerated, they're not totally absorbed of those things, because of a couple of different reasons why I don't think that they will never be totally absorbed of it, because of the stigma that comes along with being in prison. And so the stigmatization that happens about that just in people's mind, even though that individual was innocent, that still happens. And so they're still imprisoned by that. They're still imprisoned by the emotional toll that it took on them mentally in regards to the breakdown in relationships when it comes to family, friends, and so forth. And so what we try to do at Exonerated Nation is create a healing process by building community, being informative in respect to the different ways of healing. And so we have different retreats where we institute leadership development, where we also have a literacy aspect, financial literacy aspect that goes along with it. We also have one in respect to the health and well-being of an individual and consumptions and things in which we consume. And so it's really about, purging into this individual as much as information as that you possibly can in a given time frame that you may have with that individual, or those individuals. May it be over a week, maybe a weekend, maybe over a Zoom, over a course of a time in the training. And so it really is a hands-on job, because every exoneree is different. We all reintegrate back into the community differently. We all suffer differently from prison traumatic stress, and the effect of the prison traumatic stress sometimes comes out in us differently. Sometimes that is similarly, and so you find those similarities in regards to those individuals when there's a sort of kind of a group look at or a group study of those individuals. You find similarities of issues that they may have upon reentry. And most of those things stems from housing, education, jobs, and those things that are life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness, which is the being able to to have that opportunity, in other words, to do those things. And so the beginning part of it, after exoneration, is really the most difficult part. And I say that's in between the first 3 to 5 years of being re-entered back into the community. And it's a similar to being entered into the prisons, right? It taking individuals sometimes 3 to 5 years or more to really sort of kind of not to adapt to start to recognize their conditions and where they're at in regards to the prisons and start to moving around and so forth, and how they can and how they cannot. And that's the same thing out here, but just on a grander scale. And so we want to try to assist those individuals in those areas, and so they won't be as difficult in respect to that transition, and also help them in a communication and how to receive family members, understanding that you know both parties are coming into a new space now. One coming into a space because they've grown without this individual for X amount of years, and then this person coming into their space without having been grown with them for X amount of years in their family. And so it's really about bringing the two parties together and help them to sort of kind of cope with the different things that may come along with that sharing of that new space. And so, and that's why, most, almost all exonerated individuals want to be able to have their own home in
Mhm.
place to be able to go to, because they already perceive that sort of struggle and what that's going to look like and what that's going to be in that environment. And so they seek to first, I got to find a job. I have to find me somewhere to stay, and not realizing the complications that that everything that comes about. I was just recently on a call with a exoneree, and he was talking about transitioning from one state to the next.
Mm.
And he was just like, man, I'm thinking about moving from here to there. And I'm like, so, just having that conversations about the 5 P's: prior planning, prevents piss poor performance, right? So, really, right? It's the 6 P's, but we narrowed it down to 5. And so I began to talk to him about the details in that. And that's where most individuals really need the assistance, that particularly returning citizen individuals. They need help in the details of things because they're so unfamiliar with the technology, so unfamiliar with the operations of how those things are done in respect to, applying for certain things, whether it be for medical, whether it be for insurance, whether it be for a car, an apartment, a job. And so to be reacclimated and back into those things, or to be refamiliarized with those things, but with a new set of tools, is where we try to be most of assistance at. And we also try to be, and so that's what we call dealing with the immediate needs of the exonerated individuals. But we also have, extended programs for those individuals within that group to be able to, if they have, inspirations to do advocacy work or other work within the community, to really carve out their sort of who they are in their positions by sending them through a leadership development program to be able to help identify who you are in that group, right? Am I the professor? Am I the analyst? Am I the realist in the group? Who am I? Where do I sit within the group? And so to understand the rest of the group better is to understand where I sit in the group. And so that's what we try to impart and try to, to incorporate within that group right there, because as they go out to go advocate, as they go out to go advocate for, policies and laws and rights for those individuals that have been wrong or still in that wrong, and they'll be better equipped with tools to be able to do so in an effective way, to be able to teach them, what they reference to as like a elevator speech, where we try to teach them to, connect them to speakers bureaus to help them be able to tell their story in a more crafted way, to understand, so that the individual that they're talking to won't feel so drawn out and lost in what they're talking to them about. So basically, having, to give them, teach them the arc of a story, the rise and the arc and the downfall on the story, and to be able to do those things in a manner, in other words, to where they can do that on the elevator. You realize that the person may be only going up to the 4th floor. You're getting on the 1st floor. You got to be able to, talk to that individual in a way and be able to pass your card if you have one. To say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Hey, check us out, whatever it may be. Just to bring awareness. And so we help those individuals to do that. And we also do work in policy, and that's really where we really feel like that it's very important to do that, because as a group, as a community, we are sort of a pariah we are a pariah within the group of pariahs, right? Right, which is ultimately which is the case, right? We're outcasts within a group of outcast individuals, because you have facets of minorities within the community that's all same in that same pocket, where they're being outcast by a different set of facets of individuals, and so we're tossed in the middle of that by first already being outcast and took out of the society and placed into a prison setting, and then also sprung back out into this thing. And so most individuals come out with this hyper awareness, wondering whether or not that they've been accepted, not accepted. And so it's about tendering to that in our healing program, And so we have this where we do circles and where we apply restorative justice, where we try to connect those individuals with at least surrogates of victims of crime, or individuals that have been, surrogates of other cases that was wrongful convictions, may not have been particularly involved in their case, but other cases, and to have that circle of healing, because everyone has been affected in that aspect, and everyone is feeling sort of cast out and left out, specifically victims, because most victims in most cases, in almost all of the cases, what happens is that they take the back seat, the prosecutor take the front seat. It's about the prosecutor and it's about the case, and it's about the individual who's being prosecuted about that for that case. The victims say feelings, or where they're sitting in that situation, is in the back seat. And I'll say that to talk about individuals in cases where the prosecutor may be seeking the death penalty, but the victims may be against the death penalty. And so where you have those instances where the victims doesn't necessarily have their say or have an opportunity to voice that in that form, right? And so they have to sit back into the audience, and so it's really about, and so they feel sort of not victimized, but victimized by that process. And so what we do is in our healing circles is to make that connection, and so that individuals can have an opportunity to hear. So, to feel that they're in a safe place, they're in a secure place, that they have a right, that they can share these things without any judgment, without any of those things, and have that, and also get feedback. And that helps for the individual as they go about in their own places, in their own areas, as they do their advocacy work, as they do their own healing in their processes. And so we at Exonerated Nation try to, affect those areas of our community, as individuals, sort of come back out into the population after being in those prison cells. Again, just getting back to the prison setting and this sort of the demoralizing effect of that. Again, I think I may have mentioned the last time we were on a Zoom that sometimes they got to stop and frisk even in prison. They got to stop and frisk in prison, and then and they stop inmates walking around the yard and pull them over and want to pat them down to see if they got weapons or any other kind of contraband on them. And then they do those things coming out of the chow hall, going inside the chow hall, out on the yard. And sometimes they even strip search an individual right there on the yard. And so think about the shame that a person feels already in that being exposed like that already, but then for that to happen in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And so that happens. So the effect of that on an individual brings about anger, frustrations, animosity, and all of that. And so you have to, that's there. That doesn't go anywhere, specifically in that setting where there is no help to affect that. So there is no therapy, no therapist that they can go to talk to about anger. There is no anger, for certain facets of the community there is anger management, but other portions of the community there are not in that same portion, in the same group. And so so individuals who suffer with life without the possibility of parole, they don't have a chance to go participate in a anger management program, because the institution has cast them out to saying that they never will get out. And so even when they go through that humiliating process on a day-to-day basis, they have no outlet. And so that sits on that person. And so then, lo and behold, that individual was innocent the whole time and then get exonerated, and now they're out here. right, with us, with everyone, and they still have that. And so what we want to do, because that's me, that's what's been on me, and I'm part of that, is to affect that, not to change it, not to do any of that, but to affect it. Because you can only, from my perspective, is that I can only affect the hurt that you're going through, and you have to heal it from that process. So it's just give you the tools to do that. And as a community, not having individuals within the population that has specifically dealt with individuals who have been innocent in prison, and not having that understanding, we're left to counsel one another, because we have the greater understanding. We realize what we've been through. We feel more comfortable with talking with that individual. And so Exonerated Nation set out to affect those areas in a manner, in other words, that that we feel that that is helpful for each and every last one of us.
Just also kind of thought about right now, there's really, you guys help each other a lot in a variety of ways. Like Jack shared with us a habeas petition. So you guys help each other in like being kind of a law side, and then a support side, and like just so many different things that really no one else can help you but each other.
Right.
It's
Right.
nice but sad at the same time.
Sometimes, again, it's taken in perspective. I one of my board members, in Ignacio Hernandez, who runs the Hernandez Strategy Group, had to remind me about perspective, because I think I was complaining about not being able. We have a campaign going on. I was like, man, we only raised this amount of money, and this and that. And he said, look, bro, look, slow down. Like you're a little bit, you're getting a little bit too far in front of yourself. Think about this, right? He made me put things in perspective. He said, it's not a lot of individuals that can go to their phone to call a celebrity that's involved in a campaign. You have a lot of people that they seek to do that. And so don't beat yourself up about the campaign and what it's raising, but taking perspective of that what you've accomplished, in other words, to get the campaign going. And so, in other words, and so not to be, not to be so hard pressed upon yourself if you send out an email with a typo on it. You got this email out there, and now I got this, you can't take it back, and you're like, oh man, I chipped out, and you're all over yourself about this. Like, slow down. Like, it's a lot of people that love to be in your position to be able to send that email out. And so don't worry about the typo, and don't be hard. And it's just not so big. It's about not being hard on yourself. The moral of the story and of it. And so, it's really about, how do we as a community do that same thing, and to where it's visual, not where it's visualized, where people see that, but where it's an effect within the system. And so, like I like to tell people, and specifically exonerated individuals, is that you are the cause of all of the reform that is transpiring within the system, whether that be whether that's reforming the law, when it comes to identification, forensics, whether affecting how they interrogate individuals. So you're affecting the law, you're changing that. And you're also putting in place policies for that was not there in states and within communities to beat that back. Prosecutorial misconduct bills, which has been passed. Other bills that has been passed in respect to assisting that population that wasn't there. And creating not only policies, but entities, in other words, so that can happen. And so you are the cause of that. And so that not to be, because most of us feel like, I want them to, it's always fighting, fight. They had to fight for their freedom. They had to fight for it to be accepted back into society. And that fight is it has a never ending process if you don't realize the light at the end of the tunnel. And that light at the end of the tunnel is that, hey, look, stop, champ. You 40 and 0. There is no more fights. What now?
Yeah.
What now? It's what now, right? Right. When you don't have no more fights and you haven't thought about the what now because you've been fighting, 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 you don't want to be in a place to where now that the fight is over and you're lost and wondering like, who am I?
Oh.
Who am I? And so it's really about that. And so we try to affect that in an individual as much as possible. And that's, like I said, that's the care of the Exonerated Nation and what we seek to do.
So what are you working on now? What's like next on Obie's list for?
Uh, I'm really been, chatting up opportunity, in other words, to look at um restorative, to get our, to get Social Security restored back to those individuals
Mm.
that have been framed and put in prison for crimes in which they didn't commit. And specifically looking at the demographic that has not been compensated, or how that'll really affect them, to have that Social Security back restored, just in a little bit of whatever it is. And so, that's one of the things that we're looking at, and then also looking at, stirring up conversations among the community, the exonerated community, about, what is the specific acts that we're asking for when we say that that our mental health, that we need mental health, right? We need free mental health, or we need this when it comes to mental health. What is the specific act around that? And then to understand whether or not if that's something that should be talked about locally or nationally.
Mm.
And so just stirring up conversations around the population to get a feel of things, and so that to understand what, again, looking at the long-term need of the exonerated population, and how we at Exonerated Nation could be a part of that process, to affect that. And so that's what we're doing now. And we have a campaign going too right now, Justice for Exonerees, which is we're doing, it's doing okay right now, and we're really excited about it because we have the Wolf Entertainment that has joined the campaign, and one of their celebrities is Jason Beggy, young man who plays Hank on Chicago PD, the lead detective, the one that said, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to get all your guys around here and to find out what's going on in the neighborhood." And Jason is a really great guy, and he's becoming an ambassador for Exonerated Nation. I'm really excited about that, and so that's what we've been having going on. We kicked off this campaign, looking at some things in policy, and really, really hoping, that this virus comes under some bit of a control, or
Seriously.
if not the virus, at least the fluff around the virus that has everybody so scared and all of this, and everybody in their place, and rightfully so, right? Because no one knows the effect of the virus on a particular individual, and so just really about being cautious, but really excited about the opportunity, in other words, to convene the body together again, to be able to come off of our Zooms, to come to class.
I know they want that. I do too.
To come to Fresno State, to tell you the last time I've been to Fresno, the Central Valley, is when I was in Corcoran.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, right. I was in Kearns County.
Yeah.
What they say, where they learn the land of milk and honey, where they shake your hand and take your money.
Mhm.
But I would love to be able to come there to, again, to see you guys in person. I really appreciate you, Gina, for inviting me to do these things, to talk to your class.
Of course, they loved having you come.
It was a joy to come and talk to you guys. I mean, like, I really appreciate the fact that you guys are considering not only your future, but that of you guys as kids. I really, my ambition is to affect my generation. I don't know what generation we're on right now. I know,
Who
this
knows?
is not the millennial group. This is a whole nother group. This is,
Yeah,
I forget the
something,
name.
I don't know it either.
The Xena group, I think it is, or something like that. But uh, but you guys are going to affect that generation. I mean, you guys are going to be the ones that ultimately are the ones that are going to create what your environment looks like, what the justice look like within that environment, what the politics look like within the environment, what the social environment look like in the environment, and all of those things. And so I just really appreciate you guys taking out the time now to see what that, you know, what I mean, what's, you know, what that looks like and how can we affect, and, you know, at that time. So I think you guys are really doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Well, just hoping that exposing them to these problems can make an indent into whatever career field they go into, because most of our students go into the workplace, into jobs in the system potentially, whether it be victim services or corrections or law enforcement. And so if they have this in the back of their head, maybe they'll be a little different
Yeah.
and, you know, be more positive and spread that information. I know I've actually had active police officers in this class before, but I didn't have exonerees come speak at that time. And even just talking about it on chat discussions and just regular class, they said it really changed my perspective. And that's really all that we can hope for, and hope that that makes a positive change.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And, you know, one of the things that I've realized that has been, you know, such a great thing during this process is restorative justice.
Mhm.
And what is restorative justice? And you know, and looking at that, and I think that, you know, as I, you know, I remember speaking with Lisa Ray from Restorative Justice International, and, you know, we were talking about restorative justice in the intersection between restorative justice and wrongful conviction. And I'm like, you know, that's a huge intersection. Like, you gotta understand, like, that's not no regular intersection, because, you know, even in our community, you know, though it's not a labelization of victims, being labeled as victims, but we are that, right? We've
Yeah.
been victimized by the system. And so restorative justice applies in there. And I believe that restorative justice applies even in our family setting, in our friend setting. It applies in our life, because even in our own small circle of people who we deal with, we have, you know, disagreements and so forth and so on. And restorative justice applies because of the tools that are utilized in there, and which is just that, you know, two parties that are willing individuals coming together to have that ear and that other ear, both ears listening about those things, to have that healing process so that they can get past that, or to begin the process of passing that, for individuals. And so I think that restorative justice, and as it, you know, in many different forms that it is, that somehow or another, that it's not a policy thing or anything like that that can be implemented or anything like that, or put in place or law, you know, though it should be. But I just think that, you know, with the practice of those with individuals as they go out into their pockets of work that they do, whether it's within this, you know, the social pocket of the community, the justice community, and working inside institutions, outside of the institutions, working with the individuals, or personally or not, that application within oneself is this, that helps. That's going to help heal
Dr.
and
K.
fix the system.
Dr. K.
Mhm.
Um, I have a suggestion to Obi. I'm also taking I'm also taking restorative justice now. Since you are one of your groups is doing the policy reform, have
Hmm.
you thought about before a suspect plead guilty, can they not do restorative justice, the victim and the offender having a mediation, so that to avoid the high rate of pleading guilty?
Right,
Maybe
right,
you can
right.
do that in the policy,
Right,
right?
right, and absolutely, I totally agree. And you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I was having a conversation, I believe it was with Lori Levinson at Loyola Marymount Project for the Innocent, and that conversation was about that, because, you know, so Bobby Grace, which was one of the prosecutors that was involved in my case, his involvement had to do with John Jones. He was, I think, prosecuting attorney in his case. But what ended up happening was that I brought to our attention is that, you know, to that, you know, because the prosecutors have so much power
Yes,
to either charge or not charge, and
yes,
again, mentioning that what does, you know, restorative justice, you know, sort of kind of tenets how does that work? And because it really is opportunity. Is the victim willing to do it, and is the perpetrator willing to do it? And then ultimately, if they are both okay with it, then it ultimately lies upon the prosecutor. And if the
Yes.
prosecutor is in the mindset or not in the mindset of restorative justice, they don't have the knowledge or information about restorative justice and its tenets and being able in the application of it, then they won't apply it. They won't give those two individuals that chance to prevent sending this individual who may have been, addicted to drugs, that stole from the store, to come together with the store manager about that, to come to some sort of other restitutional opportunity, in other words, to pay back that specific thing without jail time. And so, yes, I think that's a conversation that really needs, should be had. And I think
Yes.
it's happening in small areas of places in respect to, what does that look like in the prosecutor's office to begin to, looking at the tenets of restorative justice and possibly applying those things prior to charge.
Yes.
Because a lot of charges don't have to be charged. I'm just gonna be flat.
Yes. That's true.
Just but again, because of a lot of different other things, they have to keep a certain quarter, they have to meet certain quarters, so they got to have certain amount of convictions, a certain amount of bodies within the institutions. They have to
Yes.
have
Oh,
that. Those
gosh.
quarters have to make it. And when that's the same thing when it comes to tickets, bonds, all of those other things. And so it really is about addressing that, right?
Yes.
You have to address that. And I think, people always talk to me, what is the biggest thing, reform that can happen within the system, is one of the questions
Yes.
I was asked to me. And for me, the biggest reform that is not even reform,
Change.
it's about accountability. Putting accountability in the system will ultimately it will make reform.
Yes.
Because people will be accountable for the work that they're doing and the actions that they're taking. That in itself will beat back and create the reform within the system that you're asking for. Because ultimately, what we're saying is there's a set of laws that we all agree is a not perfectly constructed law, but it's good enough. It's good enough if everything is done right. Right? If all of the things are done right, then it's good. All of the actors act right. People who supposed to go to jail will go to jail. Innocent individuals wouldn't go to jail.
Yes.
You will have rehabilitation, because that system will be doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in regards to the correctional facilities, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is that's the front end. You have to do that on the front end. So and that front end work is accountableness. Make the institutions accountable for not implementing rehabilitative programs for those individuals within that system. Put accountability there on prosecutors so that they can be held accountable for violating federally state statutes that are in place. Put accountability within the social reintegration part of it. So when individuals, from whether they come on convicted of crimes in which they was convicted of or not, that they have a social program that actually works, that is doing what it's supposed to do, because they are being held accountable for that reintegration of these individuals who's coming back into the community. And so, for me, you really have to do those things. Tools are tools. Is how you use them. And for me, the best tool that you can put in the kit is not reforming the system, but putting a tool in the system that's going to keep it all and running the way that it's supposed to be ran. And that tool is accountability.
Yes, you're right. I agree with you.
I think one of the parts of the class where people were most outraged has to do with the prosecutorial misconduct with that in general, and just what happens potentially with what they know in so many different regards. In my head, I'm thinking sometimes with snitches too, but the prosecutorial misconduct, many people are like, that just makes me so mad Like, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I think that the birth of that anger comes because a couple of reasons. One, they think about other individuals within a family that these things may have happened to. But then at the same time, they think about like, man, wow, like what if that was me?
Yep.
Right? They get that what if that was me feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's dirty. Like, it's almost like, you know what I mean? Like you watch somebody go over there, y'all sitting there kicking it, and you watch somebody go over there jumping on that person, and you're like, man, you feel bad. Like, no, like, what if that was me? Like,
Yeah.
stop, don't be doing that. And so it's that, what is that me feeling? And that's why the anger comes, because but for me, I think anger is ultimately sort of the water to that, to make things happen, right? Because when people are angry, they act, right? And they act in a couple of different ways. They act to reform that, to address that, to stop that. It creates that energy to do that, right? Because they, man, I ain't finna stand for none of that. You can't be doing that kind of thing. And so it's good anger. As the great man said, right? You got that, it's that kind of stuff. And so we have to just sometimes, what I come to understand is just really is realizing that, the things that are happening, not only can it happen to me, but it is happening right now as we speak.
Mhm.
And imagine that, right? So you imagine, even as we talk, that there is someone that was on trial for something they didn't do, and they're on their way to prison, and they're sitting there lost with no help, no one to do anything. And because I know it don't stop, because bad don't stop.
No.
Bad do not stop. And so it's happening. And so, but what we do know is don't stop is this, what we're doing.
Yeah.
Educating, growing, teaching, and being creative. So, this is the truth, right?
Yeah.
We excuse me for my emotion, but we stay creative in our anger because we think about ways to fix it, right? And so that's where the creation comes in at. We're like, oh yeah, well, what about, we get imaginative. And remember this about imagination. Imagination is something that you've already done. The only reason why it's in your mind.
Mhm.
The only reason why it's in your mind is because you've already done it. Now it's just about doing it. So every time you imagine something, remember you did it. You can do that.
Yeah.
It happens. So
Thank you. Do we have any questions from anyone else? Otherwise, I can keep shooting them out. Like to pause a little bit for dramatic effect. Well, I wanted you to tell them a little bit about the research that Exonerated Nation is doing. Like, I know I talked to somebody about the mental health types of things that you guys are doing, since we just kind of looked into that, but this is research that is, actively being done. And so I think it'd be interesting to hear from your point of view what's being done and how you intend to use it.
Right. So yeah, so Exonerated Nation set off maybe now, well, maybe like 3 years ago now, maybe 2-3 years ago it's been. So we set off a study of a health and wellness study amongst the California exonerated population. And what that study is about is really looking at, in all of those, in every demographic, the different things that are transpiring and had that transpired on the way out of the door, and while they've been out of the door, and sort of kind of looking at it really is about the public health aspect of it. And so we're looking at the effect of that, and sort of kind of how they've been in different pockets of the community, whether it's been in the educational pocket, work pocket, whether in isolation, in their own when in their own community, towards the exonerated pocket. And so really looking at the whole aspect of that, not only the mental but the physical aspect of it. Again, like I talked about, the debilitating effects of being in prison. And it's not only just mental, but it's also physical, because you're realizing that the depression and the stress that's caused by that, and also medications that was taken and things like that. And so we're looking at that, all of those things, the body and the mind, and it's sort of kind of, where they're at. And like I said, the research has been coming along pretty good. We had one, two, three, I believe, three presentations, two in the States and one outside of the States in Ireland, I believe it was. It's been really, really well received. We've been really extrapolating some beautiful data, information from the individuals. And that's what I said earlier on about those similarities and about the effect of prison traumatic stress and about how you have, again, that we're all affected differently, but you have that similarities where you can definitely go back through after sort of being with a group of individuals, 20 to 25 people, maybe 50 individuals, to begin to mark off, and you can see, you can draw the lines to the similarities. And then once you draw those lines to those similarities, define the commonality in those similarities there, because you have commonality there as well, and then address that in a whole sense, right? And so looking at that way, because ultimately what we want to do is to, after the research is done, is to take that data and to represent that data to the legislative body. To affect the mental health, to be able to do things, to have that specific acts. Once we have that specific ask, that's why I'm now kicking that conversation up amongst the community. What is that specific ask? Because see, then once we extrapolate from the research, the data, we will have data to go with that ask, with that specific ask. And so ultimately, that's what, you know, the research is really is about, is to extrapolate that data to really to be able to have a grander effect on our community.
That's great. So, you know, conducting research and then using it directly to affect change for exonerated persons in California and potentially use it elsewhere as well, which would be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Utilizing what we're doing with this research now as basically as a model to be able to do those things in other places. And, you know, over the year, you know, again, over this last few years, there have been a couple of different researches that are going on now around the state. And so I'm really interested in the conclusion of those researches, to, you know, those different ones, to then to be able to bring those all together to look at the findings from these different areas of the community of the United States, to then really have a really dive deep in understanding of the effect. So then, you know, you could definitely then be able to do something on a national basis then on that, because then you could show that it's just not, you know what I mean? You know, it's not isolated. And, you know, and again, you have to understand that, and specifically when it comes to research is, you know, really, I'm pretty sure you guys getting a really, you know, really good gist of that when it comes to this whole thing with the research, with the vaccine and all of the talk that's going on now, and the studies and everything that's happening. To really get a really great understanding of things, you really do need a large body of individuals to get that information from. But not to say that does, you know, it's not, you don't get that same, you can't get a similar thing from a small body of individuals, whether you're again getting that 50 to, you know, 25 to 50, maybe 100 individuals. But ultimately, it really is about, you know, gathering that information, bringing that into one place. And I think for us at Exonerated Nation, the exciting thing of it is, and the challenging part of it is, you know, really contact. You know, you have to, you know, people have moved. Some people don't really want to talk about those things. They really kind of, fold arm, you know, cross chest, I always call it. And you got the arms you know, folded across their chest. Yeah, they ain't trying to talk, bro. I'm gonna let you know now. You got their hands crossed, give them time. You're already showing you their body is closed. So you gotta look. But you know, I'm really excited about that to be able to, you know, to move that, not only move that research forward, but to ultimately come to a conclusion of that research and to be able to use that data. I think that, you know, from what I'm seeing right now, from what we're finding, and that, you know, it's going to have a great effect, that it should do some things, at least, you know, when I say do some things, bring some awareness to the legislative body about more things that they can do. You know, you guys, you know, you looked over Obie's law and things like that. One of the things I'm always, you know, surprising about Obie's law is that, you know, when they was going about that, we was talking, we was in conversations before that happened. You know, I was shocked, not shocked, but like, man, are you serious? Like, that they were surprised that it was nothing already there.
Oh.
Yeah, they was like, what, is nothing there? And I'm like, come on now, you gotta be joking me, right? Like, yeah, it's like there's nothing there for individuals who didn't commit the crime. And they was like, well, let me grab my staff together and let us take a look at this. And they came back, was like, and so they was all sort of moved by like, we gotta do something. And data does, that's what happened, just with that information. They went to go start bringing some information together, seeing, oh, it's not. And so that's what we want to do, is to have that effect with this research and this information that we gather and with this data when we be represented that to legislative bodies, for them to be able to act and move to do those things. And I'm really, I can say something. I'm really thankful to those individuals in the legislative body in the state of California that has acted, not only when it comes to Obie's law, but also when it comes to AB 1050 and all of the bills in which they have passed in the past and as of recently. It shows that they are, that restorative justice can happen.
Yeah.
Because even in the Lord, even in the legislative body, the responsibility of them not acting has them acting now. They become the perpetrator of the victims because they didn't do anything, in other words, to stop it or to fix it. So they become participatory in it, and they feel that like, oh man. And so they act in a restorative way to put things in place. In other words, to heal that. And so restorative even happens in that way too. And that's not even spoken. They ain't even saying it. It just happened naturally. You know what I mean? In that sense. So restorative justice happened naturally too.
That's nice. I had a couple of questions here. A student asked if there are ways for students to get involved with Exonerated Nations, like as a volunteer or an internship or something.
I mean, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we definitely love individuals who volunteer, who take time out of their life to, I got this amount of time. What could I do? And I think one of the things I'm always talking about that could be done, and specifically when it comes to students, is if you could if you can create a little thing there at school where you may do something where you may, create a project where you got the other student bodies to come for you to be informative to them or talk to them about exonerations and things that happen. That's one of the ways. Maybe even, poke mom and dad about donating a little bit. Mom, dad, hey, look, what about you want to donate $25? It'll help a lot. I can show you. That away too, that. Share us on your social media sites. Those are ways that I believe that students can get involved. There's exciting ways like that. Right now, you have there's some students out of New York. They got this cool little project that's going on. They've created, I didn't even know it was a thing. It's just what they call it. Where they were basically, they finna build they're gonna have a cell, actual cell. They're gonna build an actual cell. And they're gonna have an infograph, is what they call it, an infograph. Yeah, and where the cell's gonna have all of the information in there about, wrongful convictions, about criminal justice system of reform and things like that. And then they're gonna place it out on the streets
Oh,
and have people come and see, just walking by and look at it. So that's why I say about creative ways, because sometimes you have to understand, like, a lot of people out in society don't know what you know.
yeah.
Even when it comes to the adults, if they don't know, you definitely know. My peers definitely they can't be familiar with this. If my mom and dad didn't know, imagine my auntie and them can't know, and my cousins and them may not know either. And so if you do something like an infograph, and have it out, and you're like, man, what is that? First is, what is that question, and the infograph answers the question for them. And so those are different ways that students, I believe, can get involved, do things like that, and talk about it a little bit on social media.
Yeah. And as you know, I think one student from here interviewed you or talked to you, but each of them for their end of semester project either is doing a presentation or a paper on an exoneree.
Yeah.
So you could share that or talk about that with your family as a way to tell a story and to educate them on a few ways why that person became wrongfully convicted, because people are still I mean, there's a little bit more acceptance, I think, with the different like popular media things that have come out about it, like When They See Us and stuff like that on
Yeah.
Netflix. People are a little
Wild
bit more
Boar.
educated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still they don't know a lot. So that can help.
Yeah, that could definitely help. And maybe even the kicker, for those students who are doing the presentation at the end of the semester, you have to turn in, practice on your mom and dad. Hey, look, I got this presentation, and they may not even know what it is in the beginning, but when you begin to start presenting what you're doing, they're gonna be like, "Wow, that's really happening," or and so that's ways, in other words, that you do it too, because they become curious, and they may look in on their computer and things like that about it. So I really appreciate those type of things. We really, really appreciate that because, you know, um, I had a really great mentor and an exoneree by the name of Fidelis Rick Walker, who just recently passed away.
I'm so sad.
And, and he was a great, great leader. He was a great individual, great friend. And one of the things, in other words, that always sits on me, that he put on me, was that, hey, look, you know, when this work that we're doing is not just a work for now, but it's going to be a lasting work.
Yeah.
And he said to me, not to do it, you can't do it all right now.
Yeah.
And so, I bring up that to mind is because even while we're going to school and we're out to do all of these things for ourselves and for our parents, and make ourselves, everybody kind of acknowledge us and make proud of us and things that we're doing. Remember to practice self-care, though. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Acknowledge yourself, celebrate yourself, pat yourself on the back. Realize again, like I said earlier, that remember to put things in perspective. Uh, you know, and I think those things will take good care of us along our ways in whatever we do in our life.
You're so great, Obie. You're
Now,
a
you got
motivational speaker too.
no. Hey, I really appreciate you. Like I say, I love kicking it with you guys. These are the things that I was talking to one of my advisors, like, what are you doing? Like, what you been doing? I was like, oh yeah, I got this presentation. This keeps me going, keeps me excited. And to talk about not only the work that we're doing, but the hopes that we, in other words, hope to to sort of seed out there to the people, even to you guys, to hope that this ain't gonna keep, it won't be as worse as it is. Like they say with the virus, it will soon pass, it'll simmer down. And injustice in all of its forms in which it's happening will too soon simmer down. And that all things have that correction only because the universe said it that way.
So true. Well, I thank you so much for coming again. I think it's really special again that you've spent 2 classes with us at the very beginning and the very end.
Thank you
Of
guys.
it. I appreciate it so much, and so does everyone else. I know they're like, stop talking, Dr. K, get another exoneree in here. They're more interesting. I know. I love it too. So I really appreciate it. So special. I just shared the Justice for Exonerees campaign in the chat too.
Nice,
So
nice.
they
Thank
can
you.
share that on social media or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can do that. But thank you again so much. I'm glad that you stuck with us and not your other double booking selfishly.
And they too. I was like, no, you guys, I like you guys.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
You guys take care.
Thank you, Obie. Merry Christmas.
Thank you guys. Be blessed.
Thank you.
Obie.
Thank you, Obie.
Holidays. Obie.